Richard Gage, AIA. Eric Lawyer, Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, demanding a new investigation of the destruction of these 3 high-rises and an investigation of the investigators themselves.
My lieutenant for years had told me that it looked like, something didn't add up, and I just told him he was crazy. He should leave the country. I'm very patriotic, and I just thought, if you believe that anyone could be responsible for this, you shouldn't be here. It was a friend of mine from the military that actually opened my eyes to something else, and one thing led to another, and I kept looking. 9/11 kept coming up, and because it wasn't being shoved down my throat, I decided to do my own research. I wanted to know, how did they identify the terrorists so quickly? How were they so sure? And so as I started looking, this is what I found, and this is the main evidence that they had. This was found after the plane crash. This was found the next day. So you can see they found bandanas, papers, more passports. You can see these passports. They're pretty well intact. I've been to a lot of fires, and if they're out in a room that's not on fire, we'll find this kind of stuff. But the thing that stuck out to me, and someone else had pointed out, was, well, wait a second. Those passports, those IDs, they were inside either pockets or luggage or inside that plane. Then that plane hit those towers or went into the field or went into the Pentagon, and then they blew up. There were big fireballs we all saw, and then they were found actually on top of the pile. So that stuff started not adding up for me. I was like, well, wait a second, how'd they find it the next day? It should have been either on the ground or burned up or buried in the rubble. That led to Colonel Nelson. Once I started looking into this, I read his article, and he's a 34-year Air Force crash investigator, and he'd written a pretty amazing article, and he talks about his own experience into 9/11. And once I spoke with him, I asked him, I said, when did you first notice something was wrong? He said, for me, it was the first day. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what stuck out to you? He said, well, I've been to a lot of crash sites. I know how they work. And he said, it was the Pentagon. And he said, when I looked at the Pentagon, and here's some pictures of it, he said, what I saw the first day was people picking up debris, and they were removing it as quickly as possible. He said, every crash I've ever been to, it's the MP's job to secure that area, flag it, tag it, take pictures. Nobody touches anything until after the investigators are there. Well, they were cleaning it up before any investigation. He said by day 3, he knew something was wrong. And by day 3 is when he said they identified the terrorists, and it was the IDs. He said, there's no way. He said, find those 19 terrorists. It would have taken weeks to months to find that kind of evidence, to sort through it, to go through it. And he said, they recreated the aircraft crash. He said it was impossible. So that really made me start thinking more. And the more I looked into it, the 9/11 Commission themselves, I found out, they doubt their own investigation. And so many people in America believe the 9/11 Commission. That's the people who believe the official story, they still swear by it. Well, I found out the investigators themselves don't. And so you're going to see here.
So there are all kinds of reasons. We thought we were set up to fail. We got started late. We had a very short time frame. Indeed, we had to get it extended. We did not have enough money. They were afraid we were going to hang somebody, that we would point the finger.
Lee and I write in our book that we think the commission in many ways was set up to fail because we had not enough money, we didn't have enough time, we'd been appointed by the most partisan people in Washington.
So then you go to their own website. They talk here about how much they spent, the 9/11 Commission budget. It started out at $3 million. Congress then gave them an additional $11 million, and the total commission was $15 million. Now, to put that in perspective, you can see that the Columbia Space Shuttle investigation was $175 million. The Challenger investigation was $100. Monica Lewinsky was $30. 9/11 was the greatest crime in U.S. history, and we had the least amount of money going into this investigation. The FBI doesn't have enough evidence. The 9/11 Commission doesn't believe in their own investigation. We should be looking at this, and we should be holding them accountable. And the 9/11 Commission themselves, some of the commissioners have said, it's a national scandal, and we need a real investigation.
Myth. Normal evidence procedures were followed.
NIST had an interest. They were an interested party since they were the lead investigators on the building collapse. So the evidence should have been preserved. And what we find out, and NIST themselves admits they had no physical evidence to do the investigation on World Trade Center 7. You can't just make a 47-story building disappear. It can't happen. So Bill Manning was one of the editors for Fire Engineering magazine, and this is from one of his articles called Selling Out the Investigation. He said, Fire Engineering has good reason to believe that the official investigation blessed by FEMA and run by the American Society of Civil Engineers is a half-baked farce that may have already been commandeered by political forces whose primary interests, to put mildly, lie far afield of full disclosure. And this is a good point. I think all firefighters can connect with this. Did they throw away the locked doors from the Triangle Shirtwaist fire? Did they throw away the gas cans used at the Happy Land Social Club fire? Did they cast aside the pressure regulating valves at the Meridian Plaza fire? Of course not. But essentially, that's what they're doing at the World Trade Center. To treat the September 11th incident any differently would be the height of stupidity and ignorance. This is still Bill Manning. And this was a call to action. And unfortunately, I didn't listen to it back then, and I'm listening to it now. And now is when I'm standing up to do something. The destruction and removal of evidence must stop immediately. The federal government must scrap the current setup and commission a fully resourced blue ribbon panel. And remember, this was written right after 9/11. A blue ribbon panel to conduct a clean and thorough investigation of the fire and collapse, leaving no stones unturned. Firefighters, this is your call to action. Visit World Trade Center investigation, a call to action. Then contact your representatives in Congress and officials in Washington and help us correct this problem immediately. Well, I didn't listen back then, but I founded Firefighters for 9/11 Truth for this reason, to come to the truth here. Destruction of evidence. I just want you to see what happened, what these professionals talk about.
We pressed early on for a full-scale investigation, and of course one of the issues was while we were doing that, the evidence from the buildings was being destroyed.
The structural steel that would have been key to figuring out what happened to these buildings, what happened to that? Well, New York City accepted a plan 11 days after the attack to immediately start recycling the steel, not even in the United States, where some of it might have gotten saved inadvertently. No, it was put on ships bound for India and China to be melted down.
We were concerned about that, and we understood early on that those are going to hold the keys to knowing exactly how the buildings came down. And unfortunately, we were not successful in getting the elected officials and the powers that be to do that.
It's hard to imagine how at a crime scene you can destroy evidence so quickly and thoroughly and get away with it.
There were up to 400 truckloads per day being removed, and all but 236 pieces of steel from that crime scene remains. There is still some steel left that can be tested, so that's what we're calling for. And you have to be the judge. I mean, this is the greatest crime in American history, the first time ever that 3 steel and concrete high-rises collapsed into their own footprint at near free-fall speed. Don't you think we should have tested this and figured it out and saved that steel? I mean, you look at an aircraft crash, they reconstruct the aircraft in a hangar. This was even greater loss of life and engineering disaster that's ever been seen. So you be the judge. Why did they destroy this evidence?
Mayor Bloomberg from New York said, just looking at a piece of steel doesn't generally tell you anything, in his response to these questions.
Myth. Jet-fueled fireballs shot down the elevator shaft and blew out the lobby windows.
The Nade brothers made a film. They recorded the first plane strike, and they came in the lobby with Chief Pfeiffer here and his crew. I want you to pay attention. What we were originally told, and in this video you're going to hear them, they plant the first seed that this was a jet-fueled fireball that came down the elevator shaft. Not all of these elevator shafts go all the way down to the lobby. Vice versa, a lot of these go down into the basement. So what they've told us is that that fireball came down, blew out the lobby windows, which you're going to see here, and blew out the lobby windows. So what that means is that fireball had to find those elevator shafts, but the doors would have been closed up top where the plane struck, so it had to shear those elevator shafts at the top. Then that fireball, in an explosive way, would have had to come down that shaft, and then that would have meant those cars should have been stopped in the basement level, just the one floor below, because the elevator car would have acted as a plunger. It would have had to blow open those elevator doors in the lobby, and then I could have believed it. I originally believed it because that's what I was told. We're going to look at this video, and what I want you to pay particular attention to is the ceilings, the walls, the floors, and there's plants in here. Any fire I've been into that's consumed the entire, where you have a fireball come, well, we don't get fireballs, but when you have that type of thing happen, you're going to see some wilting of the plants, or probably they won't even be there anymore.
Pfeiffer was the first chief into the building.
So look at the damage. It's
right
not
away,
uniform.
a guy from the Port Authority told him the damage was somewhere above the 78th floor.
Look at the ceiling, perfectly white,
All you had
walls
to do was
white,
look around.
plants
It was
intact,
obvious. Something had happened right there in the lobby.
windows, irregular damage,
You just saw that all the windows.
all the plant. Now look at
blown out. The lobby looked like the plane hit the lobby.
Look at the elevator cars when they
Later,
show them.
they'd figure out that flaming jet fuel had shot straight down the elevator shaft.
All of this damage was done already.
Elevator cars intact.
People was all over the place.
Elevator doors.
We've never had a high-rise collapse due to fire. These buildings collapse by organic or natural methods, in these cases earthquakes. The structural system is not dismembered from itself. There's what appears to be a mangled building at the bottom. The concrete is not pulverized to a fine powder. We will compare these features to what we find at ground zero. These buildings exploded. We have witnesses that hear sounds of explosions. They see flashes of light. There's thick, billowing, enormous clouds from the pulverized solids of the buildings suspended in the air, fueled by these very, very hot gases into this cauliflower-like formation. Well, here's a controlled demolition. This is what a building looks like when it's demolished with explosives. This is all direct evidence of explosive controlled demolition. Interesting thing is fire can't create any one of these, let alone all 10. So if we have these features, we're pretty darn sure we had explosive controlled demolition.
From speaking out and starting this website and meeting Richard and a lot of the other incredible people here tonight, I've also met some military intelligence officers that have taught me a lot. And I asked one of them, how do we win? We can't get through the media. We can't get through most of our friends and family because it's too scary to talk about. How do we do this? And he said, it's easy, Eric. You just shine the light. And he said, just come from a place of love and not fear. Whoever was responsible, no matter who it was, terrorists or whoever had access to all this advanced technology, they operate from fear and darkness. They're not willing to step up here. They're not willing to take credit for what they did. But if we overcome that fear and we talk about how we love each other and we talk about the evidence and the fact, realize that we are going to win. We're going to keep shining the light. This movement is growing as we stand up together. And those of you in the room, if you can join our causes and not just ours, start your own. Take action. Do something. Investigate yourself. And just talking about it. What I'm saying is if we stand up together, we are going to win. There's so many more of us. And if we come from a place of love, they're not going to be able to stop us.
Most of all, we're asking you to speak the truth about 9/11. For a time comes when your silence is in fact betrayal. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Even if you are afraid to do things, the big thing, like I said, is just talking to people, talking with your family, talking with your friends. Make this a normal thing to talk about so that this will spread like wildfire. It's starting now. And for firefighters, sign the petition. Start showing the other firefighters that you have the courage to stand up. Be that one guy or the one girl that stands up. Soon you're going to start seeing this spreading. It's starting to happen. But sign our petition. And a lot of people say that petition doesn't mean anything. It's not going to get anywhere. To be honest, I agree. It's not going to go through the proper channels to get what we want, but what it does do is it shows the rest of the people that come to our website publicly how many people are supporting us, basically. And when we start seeing more people looking into this and signing this, we're going to want to join too. We're laying that foundation. Right now, in the fire service, you're the trailblazers. If you sign that and start talking about this, you're going to make a huge difference in this world.
The need right now in America is for patriots to step forward and speak an unpopular truth that will, in fact, save your country.